Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this week's episode of the Founders Code podcast. Our guest today is Mike Piccolo, who's the founder and CEO of an open source AI orchestration platform called Motia Dev, and in the past, a co-founder and CTO of an IT development company called Fullstack. Hi, Mike.
Hey, thanks for having me, Shmuel. Excited.
Thanks for coming to the podcast. I'm really excited to get into this one because we have a lot of similar experiences, and you've taken a path that any kind of software development company founder wants to do in the future. It's kind of start his own product company.
Well, an AI company, right? Everybody.
An AI company.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about what is your vision at Motia and where you are at the moment?
Yeah, sure. So the way that I think about Motia is, and the way it kind of came into being is, over my career, I've seen these paradigm shifts. So if you're in the software engineering space, every 10 or 15 years, you kind of see these paradigm shifts happening. So, 15 years ago when I started my career, this was in the middle of digital transformation. So this, I was a consultant, a software consultant for a company, and we were taking kind of brick and mortar companies and we're moving them. These are like plumbing companies.
Digitalization.
We're digitalizing them. And it's companies at the time that you wouldn't really think of as software companies. And they were becoming full blown software companies. So during this time, what happened is, prior to this, everybody was kind of building their own stacks from scratch. This is kind of what was called the PHP spaghetti code era, right? And so if you went from one company to another company, you as a software engineer, you'd have to relearn the stack from scratch. It's like, I have no idea, how are they doing routing? How are they doing data layer? How are they doing modeling? And so the level of complexity grew to a point where this was just unsustainable. Like, you could not sustain this amount of complexity. Like, you're taking all the business logic of a company and putting it into a bespoke system per company. So that level of complexity wasn't possible to sustain throughout the industry. And one of the big shifts was like Ruby on Rails dropped. And this was the beginning of the MVC server response era. So every programming language basically adopted this new paradigm shift of MVC. It doesn't really matter, depending on how technical you are, it doesn't matter what it is. But the point is that everybody adopted this model view controller that kind of was the backbone of this digital transformation. So Ruby on Rails, Python had Django, PHP had Laravel, Java had Spring, and .NET had .NET MVC. So that was like one big paradigm shift that I witnessed. And that was all in the back end, right? And then the next move was basically that was kind of solved, that problem, and everybody moved all the interesting things, all the what's hot in software engineering moved to the front end. So basically, you're just taking all the rest of the complexity and throwing it into the front end. And this was kind of ever increasing complex applications that we were building in the business world. And this triggered a new paradigm shift. This triggered the front end framework wars. So this was Knockout, then Angular, then Ember, then React, then Vue. And there's like a million of these now. But React won this battle by like orders of magnitude. React is ubiquitous. It's definitely being used in the components on the screen that we're looking at. And the reason why they won this battle is really important. And it's a lesson that I kind of learned. I was involved in this framework wars and had very strong opinions on it. But what they did is they made two sides of the house really happy. So they made the implementation engineers really, really happy, but they also made the library maintainers, the framework developers, the principals, and the architects really happy. And what they did is they did something kind of ingenious. They created a single core primitive that encapsulates, it's an abstraction over anything that can be UI. And in React, they call this a component. I'm not going to dive into the technical details, but basically what they did is they made it so an engineer, somebody building an application, could think, the mental model, they could think of their entire application as just a component and then nested components underneath it. So you only need to know one thing. You need to know like maybe three things about how a component works. And you can build as complex of an application as you want with just that mental model and just those tools. But they also made the other side of the house really happy because they gave these really, really strong core primitives that you could build tools on top of React. And this is ultimately why we have Next.js and Redux and like all is the React ecosystem is massive, and Vercel is a giant company that built on the backbone of these primitives. So that was like a very interesting lesson. So if we jump forward to today, I'll get to Motia eventually here, but if we jump forward to today, we everyone knows we're in the middle of another paradigm shift, right? Because of AI. And Motia is kind of my bet on what software engineering, like where we're headed and what is going to be necessary. So we're doing something very similar, but if you think about most of the interesting things that happen in the world right now, they're between a human brain and a user interface. Like in the business world, you're looking at two pieces of data and you're entering a form and you're hitting a button. Like this is between your brain and the user interface. But with AI now, you can effectively take that interaction and you can move the whole thing back to the back end, right? In the form of automation. And, there's many different ways to describe that, agentic automation or workflow automation or durable execution. But what you're doing is you're taking that step in the process or the workflow and you're moving it back to the back end. So what does that mean if we're thinking in terms of these paradigm shifts that go back end to front end to back end to front end? It means that the back end is now hot, right? Like, so back end engineering is now the hot, that is where all the action is going to be. And it's going to be in the form of this, asynchronous compute, these asynchronous workflows, these asynchronous background jobs and queues and things like that. So at Motia, we're basically just copying React's kind of model, right? So we're taking, we just created one core primitive called the step. The step represents all the existing steps, in backend, the existing steps that exist now. And that would be like API endpoints and background jobs and cron, scheduled tasks and queuing and workflow, right? But it's going to cover all of these things that are coming over the line. And, as I mentioned before, when, history doesn't repeat itself, it rhymes. But if we're looking at these paradigm shifts, it follows the same pattern. Massive amount of complexity thrown into these systems that weren't built to support it. And then you get somebody builds the abstraction that is the correct mental model, the correct abstraction that makes the two sides of the house happy. And then it takes off. And then you're able to build way more interesting and complex things based on this, simplification in the form of that abstraction. So that's kind of where Motia came from, is following these paradigm shifts and understanding, hopefully understanding where this is headed. And so we built Motia is a back-end engineering framework that does that abstraction and simplifies the mental model of building these complex, intelligent back-end systems.
So back in the day, we could see a lot of like development teams building ERP systems within these companies and trying to automate everything themselves. With this AI orchestration platforms, you can basically create your own kind of AI-powered connectors, maybe to an ERP system, or maybe a new one.
Well, I don't actually think of it in the way that, these systems are not going to be AI. So there's two sides of AI, right? There's code generation using code like Claude and Cursor and all of these things. And then there's another side, which is kind of what you're talking about, is the agentic solutions. And those would be like you've deployed them and they're running and they're using stochastic reasoning in the form of LLMs or hitting other AI, right? But you're still going to have hard-coded code that is running, deterministic code. So another kind of prediction is that like we're going to stop thinking in terms of, oh, this is an AI system and this is an API and this is a background job queuing system. It's all really just mixed together. And whether one of your steps is using stochastic reasoning to move to the next step, or it's using deterministic, it's hard-coded code. is going to become less relevant. Like we're going to stop thinking in those terms. Like it's all going to be one interconnected system.
And can you maybe bring a bit of clarity to a lot of people who are listening to this podcast? They're maybe not necessarily technical CDOs in companies, so their understanding of the whole AI world that we live in nowadays could be quite shallow. Can you kind of broaden it out for us? What is AI engineering? Because a lot of people say, okay, it's people who use Claude Code. It's people who run AI orchestration
workflows. It's a woozy. It's a, like it doesn't exist. That's the big question. And I actually I just posted on LinkedIn about this. Like AI engineer means like 20 different things. And it's because it's so new, we haven't come up with the terms, right? So there are experts that are, cursor experts. They're using tools to generate code. That is a whole skill set. Like that, they're calling it. It used to be called prompt engineer. Now it's called context engineer, and it's in a month it'll be called something else. So I actually don't have the name for it, and I don't know. Right now we're going with context engineer, but that describes somebody who is setting up your software development lifecycle and the tooling around it, and how your team is generating code using AI. But then there's a whole nother side of it where it's, you're talking about solutions. Like these are deployed things that are ultimately integrating with OpenAI and Claude and doing whatever the task is. Before, you would have had to hard code that particular task, and it would be really hard or potentially impossible to do. And now you're integrating with these LLM tools that are doing the task. But those are like different skill sets. And, further beyond that, there's the actual AI engineering before
building LLMs,
doing image recognition, all of that. So that's a whole nother field. And the problem is AI engineer, you can mean any of those things when you say that.
Yeah. And the thing is, everybody online seems to be like, oh, AI is hot. I'll put AI in front of my position. So now AI engineer. Nobody knows if they're trying to, portray themselves as these like $100 million a year LLM senior kind of creators, engineers, or just somebody who's just discovered that you can use Claude Code.
Yeah, it's really hard to hire for that, right? Like, because you say AI engineer and you get a machine learning engineer and somebody who uses ChatGPT, and you're like, that's I didn't want either of those. Like, so.
And for all of the people, like taking back maybe 3-4 years ago, we had AI engineering using AI assistants to code was not as developed as it is right now. So a lot of people were still trying to get into IT world as engineers, backend developers, front-end developers. For everybody trying to kind of analyze their own place in this field over the next 10 years. And for those starting out, I'm like, okay, I want to do something with technology. What would you suggest would be the core kind of stack to follow, or the main kind of technology to focus around?
Well, yeah. I mean, right now, like if you were specifically going into software engineering, it would just be double, triple, quadruple down into Cursor or Claude Code and learn these tools really deeply. It actually is pretty hard to find somebody who's legitimately an expert at setting these tools up properly and then ensuring that your team is using them properly. That is a very hot commodity right now. And it's actually really hard to find, surprisingly. But to do it right, like it's not, it doesn't work. I mean, it certainly doesn't work yet where you can just give your team Cursor and then be like, oh, we're now, 50% more productive. Like it doesn't work like that. Like you have to really learn the tool and learn how it works and learn how it works across the distributed team and how to incorporate properly in the software development lifecycle for you to get the gains. You can get there, but it's really hard, because the tools right now, they have a tendency to write a lot of code. And if you don't understand how to rein them in and when to use them and how to constrain them, you'll end up with just crazy, either too many PRs or a lot of slop or something like this. So the advice specifically would just be, double, triple down in that. Like, if you're going to college now, I don't think being an expert in particular syntax of a particular language is going to be a valuable skill. But, that's not really what software engineering was in the first place. That was like, what you ended up doing to produce the result. But there's a lot more to engineering than that.
And can we go back to maybe your early days? Was there anything specific in the way that you were brought up that kind of showed that one day you'll take your founder's path?
Yeah. Mostly I'm just not good at being an employee. Like, so it never really was much of an option for me. I have high disagreeability. I have all the traits that kind of edge you in that direction. I mean, the other thing that helped me really make the decision was I graduated in 2008 from college, which was literally the worst job market in 90 years, I think. So like there were just no jobs, right? So
the market crashed.
Yeah, exactly. So in hindsight, that's kind of a blessing, because maybe I would have gotten a job that I wasn't quite as satisfied with, and I wouldn't have built Fullstack, and I wouldn't be on this path. So, but it definitely did influence me. The funny story is, like, when I was in college, everybody, when you're picking your major, everybody who was giving me advice cut their teeth in the 80s and 90s. So their advice was, oh, you should get a generic business degree. This is what everybody, then you have all these options. This is what you want. I graduate, the financial crisis happens, and everybody's like, what do you mean? You need to be specialized. What are you doing with a generic business degree? So, yeah.
So you don't know where to apply it directly without having any like specific skills, let's say, in any particular domain.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would also say be careful of the advice of the previous generation. The new, the market's going to be different than than when they graduated, likely.
And did you also feel like the influence? I think I remember I was in college around the same time. I think I was graduating in the college around 2008, 2009. And this was just, the era everybody started using Facebook. It was just like, and everyone, they were playing these games, Motia Wars or something in browsers. And everybody wanted to be the next Zuckerberg. And it like being like before that, being a millionaire, being a like tech billionaire was something like you kind of hear about those people. And after Facebook came, it kind of became more public. And you could see those people, and they're developing, and everybody's around the stories, and they keep popping up with all these different softwares around the world. Has that kind of influenced you in terms of like, oh, well, if these college kids can do this, maybe I can too?
Yeah, I think so. I tried to do multiple startups that were kind of, influenced by the Zuckerbergs of the world, right? But what I fell into was IT services, which is a very known business model. There's a million IT services firm. The business model is very known. The go-to-market is very known. So there's a lot of things you can compete on, as you know, right? But my advice to anybody is, especially for your first one, like, you should not be aiming at making the next Facebook. Like, you should find a business model that where, have some you need some kind of take on that business model, that why it would succeed and how you're going to do it better than the competition. But, in general, I wouldn't suggest, right out of the gates, just trying to be the next Facebook. I think it's a little,
I think we've all learned that lesson.
Yeah.
I think back in the day when I was working my first startup, my co-founder came to me and I was like, we can make social networking like Facebook, but make it better with all these features. Yeah. Like, no, that's not going to work. And nobody was talking about you have to pick something niche. It's now that all of this knowledge is all over the internet and you can easily get access to it. And how was the start of your journey with Fullstack? Where did you meet with your co-founder?
I met, it was called Hacker Lab. It's a co-working space in Sacramento. And it was me and one of my buddies who went. So after college, I went and worked construction. Like I mentioned, there's no so, and then I kind of figured out I liked construction, but I figured out that wasn't, my long-term path. So I went to a coding boot camp, and then I met one of the co-founders there. And then I went off and did software consulting that I mentioned. And then the two of them went off and did tried several startups. And then I left software consulting to join them and build these startups that we, had marginal success, but not enough.
Yeah.
And then, we tried a couple, we actually built, we were doing exactly what I'm saying not to do. We built the Uber for lawn care, and it had a lot of success. I think it got listed as number one in Yelp. My co-founders built the majority of that, and I joined on, to help them. But there was like a bunch of companies that were doing that at the time. I think there was like 4 companies or 5 companies, and several of them got like VC money. The business model just didn't work at all. Like it just wasn't a functioning business model at the time. So we dropped that one, and then we did a couple more, and eventually we're kind of looking at each other, and we have our wives, recently got wives, and like, it's like maybe we should make some money. It's like,
good thought.
Yeah, So we just took whatever we could. Like we went on, Jobber, and like, we took. I think our first project was a $200 WordPress site that I built myself, and I'm not a very good, front end developer, like building websites. Like it's not my forte. I'm much more on the back end. But that was our first project. I was like, hey, let's do it. And then the next one was 1,000. The next one, so we just moved the ball along.
Yeah, I can relate. I think the first one was, I think it was optimizing a WordPress website for speed. I think it was for $250 at the time. I think it was 2016.
Yeah.
I think that's kind of the area that everybody was kind of like getting their feet wet in the technology world.
Starts with WordPress,
Yeah. And can you talk a little bit about your leadership style?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of leadership, I like to give people like massive amounts of ownership and leeway, and let them just take. What I think is that their responsibility is very rarely given. It's generally just taken or earned. So that is how I, operate the company. I want to bring people in who just they just see the void. It's like, oh, no one's doing this. Like, I'm just going to take that. And now that's my responsibility. I'm like, yes, like you own that now. You're DRI. Good. And finding people that thrive in that environment and that really want, like, they want to be in that environment. They want to be taking ownership and taking more responsibility and doing important things and not having to ask permission to do it. It's like you come to me and it's like, oh, I had this whole go-to-market thing is set up. It's ready to go. Like, I really think it's going to, I'm like, yes, go, let's test it.
And what would you say, like, we'll get to the culture and the company as well. Do you remember like the toughest years or the toughest months that maybe you faced at the start of Fullstack? Were there any moments where you're like, oh shit, we're going to go bankrupt in like 2 months?
Well, I think it's basically just cyclical. There's really, really hard points, and they come up every couple of months. Like consulting is very much a grind. And there's very, very high expectations on consultancies to deliver. So, and then it becomes very, very stressful to get a release out, and the team, somebody's not performing on the team, and you have to, other people or yourself or other people have to carry that weight, and you have to get it over the line. And then you kind of get over the hump, and then things kind of stabilize for quite a while. They can stabilize for a year at a time, but then you have Fullstack has like 150 clients or something like that. So there's always something going on that kind of has that feel to it. So I don't think there is any one particular time, but most of it in terms of consulting is just around project completion and the level of stress that is involved in project completion.
Do you also feel like you've built resilience over time when you just stopped taking everything close to heart and you're just like, well, we'll manage anyway. I know that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's true. I do think you get resilience. I think you also kind of learn that you prove to yourself that you can do it, right? You're like, we've been in this kind of spot 20 times and we figured it out 20 times. It's very likely we're going to figure it out. I don't see exactly the path over the next month that we're going to figure it out, but we're going to figure it out. And you can tell that confidently to your team because you have the track record under your belt, right?
Yeah. And everybody's trying to make sure that people around them are the best kind of suited people to bring about success in the future. You've talked about ownership, which is one of the parts. And when building that culture, it is important to make sure that you can, as a founder, to protect that culture and make decisions. If you see somebody like failing to fit within the culture of the company or start to be toxic, it's up to you to be the one to make a fast decision to make sure you don't regret it, making it later. Was it always easy for you to kind of keep the culture in place and like, oh, you don't fit in, I'm sorry, you'll find somewhere else? Or were you trying to be kind and nice?
Yeah. I've done both over the span of my career. I've been let things linger longer. I knew it wasn't going to work and I let it linger longer than I should have. And I've also become better at that. And it's not always clear though. I've let things linger and it turned out amazing. Like they actually got over the hump and they're some of the best team members. So it's very, very difficult to make that call and to know. Because some people take 3 months, 6 months to get into a groove. And some people hit the ground running and it's very hard to know. Some of the people that took the 6 months had a higher trajectory ultimately. Yeah. So I actually don't know how I feel about that. I don't know how to yet identify that consistently. I don't have a heuristic for it.
Whenever I talk to founders, there's always this kind of question about, should you trust your gut feeling? And a lot of them kind of say like, I had a gut feeling about that person, but I didn't do anything. What is your relationship to that like gut feeling? Do you always like, I should trust it, or maybe sometimes I should give it some time to play out?
I tend to trust my gut a lot, but I do try to validate that with data. So like I tend to trust my gut quite a bit, and then I will make a mental note of that or a physical note of that, and kind of follow up on my gut feeling and reflect on it. Like just recently I had a situation where I had a gut feeling and I was wrong. And it turned out, and I was very glad that I didn't react on that gut feeling, which like truly like.
So impulse control is something that
I think so. Yeah. I think that one's a difficult one because I've seen it go both ways, and it's a kind of a toss up, right?
Mm-hmm. Like something that I notice sometimes, at times, not making a decision is the right decision to make, and just giving it some time to kind of for the situations to cool off. And maybe it also kind of allows people to put themselves forward to try and sort things out without having your oversight and having somebody to come in and be like, hey guys, this is how you should do things.
Yeah, I will say like I'm very direct. So I'll tell people the expectation and I'll give them, I expect you to go take things on your own. Even if I don't tell you, that's how I expect the team to operate, right? I need a team that is finding and being creative and providing value outside of the things that are listed in the role. It's just not going to cut it if I have to say, here's the role and here's the 8 things that you do. We're not really living in a world where that is an option in the world of AI, right? You can learn and implement and do things so quickly now with AI that it's like you kind of have to be creative and beyond just a simple checklist.
And can you tell me what is different between Mike, who's right out of college, and Mike, who's just starting his 2 years at a consultancy, and then the Mike we see today?
Yeah, well, so I went to San Diego State, and I didn't take school particularly seriously. Like San Diego State there's a lot of ways to be distracted away from school in San Diego. So,
like,
well, there's the beach and there's partying
Okay.
and there's all kinds of, there's girls, there's whatever, there's tons of things to distract you from college itself, the academic side of college. So
Been there.
yeah, yeah. So the mic right out of college was nowhere near ready for any reality of life. And that was, I needed a lot of different lessons. And one of them was going into construction. My stepdad, it was my stepdad's company. And I learned a lot of things from him, that I've used throughout my career directly, which is kind of interesting because you wouldn't think there'd be that crossover. But, one of the things I learned from him was, when we would go into a project, he would go into a project and like his goal was to become best friends with the super or the person in charge of the project. And we would be, this is a commercial project. So we're swinging doors, we're hanging doors, like these large commercial doors. But we would leave the project with like 8 different things. Like on these big commercial operations, there's always like 8 whatever vendors that just drop out, that just don't show up or they can't do it or whatever. And my stepdad was just really, really good at the relationship piece of that interaction. And he would just pick up, he's like, we were building the doors at a prison in Vacaville. And it is a large, huge building. And the guy super comes in one day, he's like, oh my gosh, the T-bar guy dropped out. And he's like, Don, can you do the T-bar? And he's like, yep. And then I'm like, I walk out and I'm like, Don, we've never done T-bar. And he's like, he's like, we'll figure it out. It's just cool as a cucumber. He's like, we'll figure it out. And we did. And that's kind of that, going back to the projects thing, that's the lesson, is like, you just say yes to stuff. You will figure it out. So
I think it's a big secret to like growing an IT consultancy too, because if you have a strong enough team that can persevere and kind of like spend the night and find things out, it's just like all of this is just human-made knowledge, and everybody can master it. So it just takes time and just say yes.
Absolutely. Like that, you need that, but you also need a leader who can express that to them. Like the calmness that he expressed, I was like, if he freaked out, I would have been like, it would have been, what are we going to do? If he's just like, I'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. Like, we're going to go research, buy a laser level. Like we'll do it,
And were there any other like mentor models for you, people you've looked up to and who've influenced you?
Yeah, my first boss at the software consultancy was a big mentor, both technically and with all the soft skills and these things, like watching him, how he interacted with clients and how he managed a project. And he was a big influence on me for sure.
And how has your why evolved over these years?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think for Fullstack, it was consulting. There's a lot of it's a lucrative business. It's challenging. There's like lots of interesting. It's very fast paced, so like you learn so much stuff in consulting. It's like every 3 months you're on a new project or whatever. You're doing something new, and you're like you're kind of at the bleeding edge and teaching your clients how to work at the bleeding edge. So there's lots of really interesting things about consulting that that is different than if you were to work at a large company where you have one role, and then like a year or two from then you have another role, and you're kind of focused on this one niche thing. I mean, that has its merits as well, but like consulting is just, man, you're learning at an incredible pace. So I think that was kind of the first phase was doing that in projects. Like I was actually doing a lot of project work and the second half of that was kind of working on product and higher level things as CTO. So that was like the second half of my career in Fullstack, was kind of learning some higher level business management skills in real life. I went to business college, but like I said,
I didn't study much.
Yeah.
Well, it's college anyway, so.
And then the why now, I've always been really, really interested in, from the beginning of my career, of building these abstractions, like I talked about in the beginning, building the right abstraction. There's something like, it's probably hard to understand if you haven't developed, like coded yourself, but like you can make something beautiful and elegant and artistic in a way, and solve solve a problem at the same time. This is a bit of a passion project. Like I want it to succeed and become a very successful company, but it's kind of, the why is kind of coming from a bit of a different place than
So would you say
Fullstack.
that it kind of like money, the role of money in life kind of diminished after you've kind of felt yourself more secure after being in consultancy for 11 years. So now you feel that it's safer to pursue something of like a passion rather than a pure focus for short-term returns. Maybe.
Yes, I absolutely. I've became successful enough to where that is, it's just finances is not a particular massive concern at this stage in my life. And then it's also not as enticing to necessarily make the next X amount when you're first starting your first business. That's
the first $200, like, yeah, it's a business now.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, I agree. I think that is very true.
And with being a founder comes a lot of things that only other founders will kind of understand. And one of them is the importance to be ready to brace the day, because not every day is, well, most of the days are fairly complex and hard, and you have to make a lot of tough decisions, and you're always fixing something that's broken. You're kind of trying to build a team, do everything. In terms of good days versus shitty days, what is your percentage?
It's a good question. So I think Elon talks about this a little bit, how when you own the business and you're the last line of defense, like the entire business acts as a giant filter to give you all of the worst possible problems, right? Because all of the easy ones get solved, and all of the,
you're always in the gutters.
yeah. So I think it's pretty often. I mean, it's pretty often you're dealing with something that is not super fun. It's not like super, super enjoyable. There are those moments, even with consistency, you can have some of those moments, but most days you're going to have to deal with something that is boring, frustrating, monotonous, challenging, something that makes you angry. So there's going to be like these negative parts to running a business, and it's going to be pretty consistent. So I think part of it, like you said, is adapting, being able to handle that. Like, so I really think that there's a huge part of being successful as a business is just outlasting people who can't deal with that.
Yeah. And this is partly the reason I love asking this question, because the next one is, what are your mental frameworks and life hacks that can help you persevere through the sheer amount of the days where you don't wake up and like, hey, yeah, let's nail the day. You're like, oh, fuck, so many problems to deal with today. What do you say to yourself? Are there any actions that you just do to kind of get you back into the right frame of mind?
I don't think I do anything in particular to manage this. I will say that like there are things that you can do along, like throughout your life, that will make you much, much better at this. And like working construction, like I had to sweep the entire floor for hours, like these monotonous things. It was not enjoyable, but learning to do really hard work in any capacity is like, will help you get through these things. So like I've kind of built up a tolerance to hard work. So speaking of mentors, like when I was growing up, one of my best friends, his dad, we would go over there and he would just make us work the whole time. Like we'd work for like 6 hours, like it'd be on a weekend. He'd be like, and it would be completely ridiculous stuff that be like, oh, there's a giant hill in his backyard. And he'd be like, pick all the weeds off the hill. And we're like, what? He's like, yeah, that hill needs to have all the weeds picked off. And we would just do that for 6 hours. And then he would, like basically do anything we wanted after that. Like we would have milkshakes and we go to the coolest thing and he was a really great guy, but he was teaching us a lesson, right? So I think you need to you put yourself in situations where you're purposely going through some kind of difficulty, like along the way to where when you get to these type of things in repetition, when you're owning a business, that it's just part of it, right? You just are like, this is what it is, this is how you run a business, is dealing with these difficulties and being able to manage it.
Is there anything you did else to build your character? Because to me, it sounds like you were faced with a lot of hard things to prove to yourself that you can do hard things. So when there is a large challenge in front of you, even now, you have a new investor meeting, like customer acquisition strategy meeting, you know you can handle it because you've done hard things in the past, and this is what hard feels like.
Well, I think working out and physical activity is kind of the main thing. The hack that I use for working out is I hire a trainer, and not because I want training advice. I can do all the lifts. It's nice to have one, but that's not what it's for. What it's really for is to make me show up at 6 a.m. every morning and grind and like work really, really hard. Like that's what I want. And if I weren't to have a trainer, then I would I could probably do it for like 6 months, 8 months, but then the holidays come, I get sick, and then I'm off for 3 months and I'm set back. I do the training 3 times a week, and I do tennis 2 to 3 times a week, like every morning at like 6 a.m. Right. And I work really hard while I'm doing it. That is like a daily ritual. That is, I'm going to start by working really hard off the bat.
And how easy it is for you to keep that, shall we say, discipline, or do you have a word like habits or something more?
It's not easy. I've found out about myself that I can only do it for 6 to 8 months with consistency. I know it about myself, and the willpower will not get me through the sickness and the holidays and the other things. That's the hack. It doesn't need to be a trainer. You could do CrossFit or a group, or you could have a friend, but I need some kind of external pressure. All it is, it's like this person expects you to show up and expects you to work hard, really hard in the morning. And that's where I found my ability to be consistent year over year, where I'm going every single, I don't miss.
It's adding that extra pressure, because I kind of want to try that for myself too, because I remember back in the day when you have a trainer, you kind of feel accountable, like somebody holding you accountable for all of that. But right now it almost feels like I want to kind of have a decent level of making sure I don't abuse myself, where it's like, oh, maybe I don't feel like going today, but there's somebody waiting, I have to go. Like, why did I do that to myself, you know?
Yeah, there's a couple tricks. There's one that's very cringy and not like, I don't know if I would
give it to us.
Use a trainer, use whatever tricks you get, and then get into the best physical shape you've ever been, and then take a picture of yourself and post it publicly. And now you are in your mind, like you identify yourself as this fit person, and then you've socially told people, I'm this fit person. So if you go against that contract, you're letting yourself down, you're letting everybody else down. You can no longer identify as the fit person that you've posted. So I think it's very cringy, but it's an external pressure that social pressure is very, very strong in many people. Me, like I care. I would probably like to do so less, but because I have this trait, I'm like, hey, let's use that. I did it a couple years back. I posted a picture on Twitter with my shirt off, and I got probably made fun of and ridiculed. But like the point of it was to be like, now I have to keep that level of fitness. I got to do it.
Yeah. And how easy was it to, with age? Because I think after 30 especially, it gets a bit harder to maintain the same level of metabolism. Have you found like yourself, especially with like bad days and you want to, you're craving something like sugars or anything like quick dopamine? I know Cola Zero kind of helps with, making sure you don't eat too much sugar.
Yeah, I went through a pretty heavy phase of Tim Ferriss, like back in when I was 8 or something, 25 to 28. So I did all the lean and the slow carb and the low carb and all of these diets. So I did a bit of experimenting, and I I've built up a bit of intuition about what I need. So I kind of can feel, I don't know, I just have an intuition of what is the right amount. And did I overdo it? And I kind of can pull back. So I don't do macro counting or any of these kind of, or I don't do a specific diet. I just have done enough experimenting with these diets to kind of find a happy medium that works.
Cool. I almost feel like after this episode, I'm just going to go to the gym because I haven't been in like 5 months. And I'm just getting to the point where I'm like, dude, it just has to happen.
Dude, trainer, I'm telling you, trainer or a class, like just say, just pay for it up front and be like, I just commit to it. Like, or find a friend at the class that, wants you to be there, and like, you can't let them down. That's all it took for me. It was just the external expectation.
And I want to also touch one more topic, which I think resonates with a lot of people that I speak to. And it's really about that motivation is the kind of like a wrong word for like long lasting energy. And everybody's trying to find that way to keep themselves ignited, to keep the fire burning. And for a lot of people, it starts with, I have to prove myself to the parents. You have to prove yourself to your mom. You have to prove yourself to your dad. And some people like stay in their 40s, still using that as the main source of fire, which works. And I think is one of the best kind of types of fire to ignite a founder. Have you ever tried to like self-analyze and try to understand what is driving you from within?
Yeah. I think that some of it is that like you need to prove to somebody. I haven't analyzed who it was exactly, but it's your parents or something, but like prove that you are successful, and however you measure that. I think another one that's really interesting is chip on the shoulder, right? For me, the best example of this is Michael Jordan, right? So in his Hall of Fame speech, there was a good portion of it dedicated to the high school coach who cut him. That's an incredible thing. He is the best. Everyone agrees. Like, he's the best basketball player of all time. He's giving his Hall of Fame speech, and he's like, that guy cut me off the team. Like, he had that chip. Like, he used that chip. It's probably why he was out there practicing. So I'm not going to go in. I'm not going to go into the details of my chip, but I had a chip. And the interesting, I think it's right. I think Jordan is right. It's super trivial. It doesn't matter. If I met this person that gave me this chip, I would probably be laughing with them and like having fun. Like, I would not go and be like, I told you, look at. It's not really for that. It's like, you kind of need that chip. I might thank them, really. I actually think that this person that gave me the chip, they were actually right at the time. Like, I wasn't on a trajectory for success, right? There was no indication that I was going to get there. I think it was actually really helpful if you kind of look back on it.
And, the voices that are still in your head were about that chip. The voices of that person. It's like, oh, you're not good enough. Look at yourself. Like,
I think so, yeah. I mean, I don't think about that every day, but like,
yeah. Only when you're down and you need.
Yeah, you need a little extra. Yeah.
And have you found that after your success at Fullstack, that voice, it like almost doesn't make sense anymore? You can hear it, but you're like, yeah, but it doesn't ignite me anymore because I'm not a loser. Like, look at all that stuff. Like,
you got to get a new chip. You can, I don't know, make one up. Like, there's always something that it's like, I built this company I with my co-founder. I haven't done it on my own, right? So now I have a chip to, hey, what can I do on my own? It's a whole new endeavor. There's always something else you can do that is interesting, that is kind of, raising the bar for yourself.
And what are you most excited about for the next 5 years?
It has to be AI, right? Like, it has to be AI, because I'm pretty deep in this stuff, and it's just insane what's going on. Like, using these tools and seeing what they're capable of already. I refuse to predict past 5 years just because it's just too crazy. I don't know. Like, no, I don't think anybody knows what's going to happen 5 years from now, truly. So, I mean, that's definitely what I'm most excited about is kind of, and nervous a little bit. There's the possibility that it's substantially disruptive in a bad way. And I think it will be. No matter how negative it is, there will be negative consequences to it for sure. So it's a lot of excitement, maybe a little bit of of hesitancy.
And I think your experience with consultancy, because I can just say from myself, like being able to work not in one company, but when you have a lot of projects, a lot of other companies, and you can see inside, you can hear from the first like people about the real problems with adoptions and all of that. Like knowing all of that, having seen the insights of like all the industries and how they operate currently and how they're actually using AI and embracing it, do you believe that we are living in somewhat of an AI bubble at the moment?
I believe it's a bit of both. I posted on LinkedIn about this, but it's you have your AI as God folks that are just simply hyping it. It's just AI is God, and then you have your AI is slop or AI is trash. It doesn't ever produce anything. So I think the reality is basically in the middle of those two things. Like I mentioned before, you can't just give your entire team cursor and then expect everything to just work itself out. Like it's going to be a lot of hard work. There's going to be a lot of red tape, especially in larger organizations. There's security, compliance, legal, bureaucracy, adoption rate, training. So I think it's going to take quite a bit of time. I do think it's moving faster than any other kind of a technology in the past, but I think it will still take some time to proliferate and be effective in all of these different types of organizations.
I often think about, recently Elon Musk said that in the future we'll have obviously companies using AI that will outperform companies that are using less AI. But then these are going to be massively overperformed by companies that are entirely run by AI. And how far do you think we are from that vision of where we actually have companies like fully run autonomously? There's just one person who kind of like registered the company. Everything else is done by, orchestrated AI engines.
I think it's probably the size of the company and like what its focus is. So if you gave a very narrow goal to a recursive, like, I don't know if you've seen this Ralph, the recursive loop thing that's been going around. It's basically just give AI a goal and it just recursively loops till it's done. It's not there yet. I could definitely see that happening within the next 5 years. And I could potentially see it happening to like narrowly scope things in like the next 2 years.
Well, I think Motia is going to be a jump in that direction, helping build that future.
Yes, I hope so. I hope so for sure. I think that's my take on it is it's a lot harder than people think to get these things to work. To get any particular solution to work in production is a lot harder than they think. So like, for instance, you can take any particular process or any workflow and you can just play around with ChatGPT or Claude and you can get something to work and you're like, oh, it works. And then if you eval it, if you use eval tools or evaluation tools and you run it 1,000 times, the question is like, how many times does it work out of those 1,000 times? That's the important part, not that you could get it to work. Because the thing is not going, depending on the domain that you're in, it's like, does it have to be 6 Sigma? Like, does it have to work 99.99% of the time? Or maybe 95% is fine, but still it's even hard to achieve 95%. Like you're talking about concurrency, like how often is it running? How many can run in parallel? Atomic state updates. What if this runs before this? Is there, collisions and retries? Like, what if OpenAI goes down? What happens to all those jobs that, we're churning? And like, there's like a lot of infrastructure details that go into these kind of solutions that you graduate through time to build this thing that is resilient, that is durable and resilient in the real world, right? Like, and especially like if you're testing these things out, the tests always work. Like, oh, look at the test, and then as soon as you put it into the real world, it gets messy and difficult.
I can almost imagine 5 years down the line, we have OpenAI going down for like 10 minutes, and half the country just stops working. Nothing works.
I have not even thought about that, but you're absolutely correct. Like that's going to be OpenAI's uptime is going to be like a national security concern.
Everybody's just going to be monitoring every morning. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
we're up to schedule.
exactly.
And there was one thing that you wanted to maybe share some advice, somebody to who is a founder right now, right after university or at a job right now, but thinking to start something of his own. What kind of advice would you give them?
I don't know if I have exactly advice around this, but I've been thinking about it a lot. And Chamath posted something about this yesterday, and there is the whole business model is changing, and founders need to think, if you're really truly just starting, you need to think very carefully about the business model, especially if you're building software. Like I'm thinking about it, I'm building software. So it's when software becomes extremely easy to produce, cheap to produce, and it's very fast to produce it, it's going to be hard to understand how to monetize that over a long period of time. Like traditionally you build SaaS and you can you can add incremental improvements to it over the span of like a long span of time, like 3 years, 5 years, and you're kind of monetizing that investment that you made in building the system. And I don't know exactly how that works when you can build the whole thing in like 2 months or something like that. It changes the business model dramatically. It's unclear. There will be business models that work in this environment, and I don't exactly know what they are. But if I were a founder, I am a founder, but if I were another founder not building Motia, I would be thinking about what could those business models look like in that type of environment.
Well, Mike Piccolo, everyone. I hope I pronounced your last name correctly.
You did. Good job.
Thanks so much for joining me today, Mike, and sharing some of your thoughts. I wish you all the best building Motia, and we'll be following in on your success and your development, and hope to have you on this podcast maybe sometime down the line as well to talk more about seeing where the AI generation has gotten us. So thank you so much for being a part of this.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It was great.